Welcome, everyone, to the Proven Knowledge Podcast. I'm your host, Anthony Church. I'm a music producer from Northeast Ohio. I began this weekly interview series to give you different perspectives from artists, producers, engineers, and other individuals in the music industry. In each episode, we touch on not only what has helped the person succeed, but we also touch on what has shaped them into the person that they are today. I hope you're able to gain some real proven knowledge from the show, and that it helps elevate you on your own journey to success as well. Let's get into it. What's going on, everyone? Welcome to episode 290 here in the Proven Knowledge Podcast. Today, I welcomed the host of the Passion Projects podcast. This was a podcast I was featured on toward the end of last year. His name is Adam Wall. I got connected with Adam via Instagram. I actually came across one of his videos under a podcasting hashtag. Followed his social media, ended up checking out his episodes on Spotify, and I really loved and resonated with the message behind Passion Projects, the reasoning he got into it, all that good stuff. Started checking out a ton of the episodes, and then I ended up sending him an email about being on the show. And like I said, I was on that show on an episode, I think at the beginning of November. Had a very great experience. Ended up sending Adam a copy of my vinyl Unknown Advantage. And then I also invited him to be on this show, and we made that happen this week. So very cool conversation. We talked about the synopsis of the Passion Projects podcast, but also his love for music as an artist and producer himself. He talked about, kind of shifting from doing music to doing podcasting, some of the struggles and some of the hurdles he's had to overcome by being a showrunner all on his own, doing both in-person interviews and virtual interviews. These were all things I could relate to as a fellow podcaster, but I think these are also some great tips and some great advice for any of you out there looking to start your own podcast as well. So a lot of great tips on that side. And I thank Adam for not only supporting my music and my journey, but for, doing everything he's doing with Passion Projects. I'm excited to see how that platform will continue to grow in the future, and Adam has a lot of amazing goals for the future. So I'm just excited to stay tapped in with him and see what he does here in the next, few years, and see how that whole thing that he's got going on will continue to flourish and prosper. So thanks to Adam for stopping by this week, and I hope everyone enjoys this one as always. So without further ado, let's get into it. So again, Adam, thanks for being here, man, and I'm happy to, kind of flip the script today, because I know you're usually the one, asking the questions and things like that, so I'm happy to have you as a guest. But, to start off every episode, we have the guests kind of just introduce themselves, give a brief, synopsis of who you are and what you do.
Yeah, it definitely is a little bit different for me, being on the other side of things. But thank you so much for having me. And glad to be here. I'm Adam Wall. I am a content creator, music producer, artist, social media, podcast host. I wear a lot of hats. Music is kind of primarily where things started out. I began learning how to play guitar, piano, ukulele, different instruments, and then kind of incorporated music production into that. I believe it's either 7 or 8 songs released on all the big music platforms, Spotify, Apple Music, blah, 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 all those different places. And as music productions kind of faded a little bit, I've transitioned into this role of being a content creator and a podcaster. I host the Passion Projects podcast, and thankfully Anthony was kind enough to come on there and chat with me as well. I host Passion Projects, and that's a platform where I invite artists and creatives to come on and tell their craft and their story, and just explore all routes of creativity. Of course, I have lots of plans for how I want to expand that out in the future. But that's kind of the gist of it right now, and what I'm doing as far as content and production and those type of things.
For sure. And like I said, I think I mentioned this on your show. I discovered you through the show itself, and then kind of discovered as well that you had made music, or that was kind of like your beginnings as well. So I guess I want to start there with, the music journey. We'll kind of dive into each one of these. What kind of led you to make that shift over to doing podcasting? Because I know you've talked about this in your show a little bit, how the fire to keep consistently making music and putting things out, it's not really there for you right now, but you still have a love for music. So talk to me about that a little bit, and kind of what led you to that point where you're at now, where you said, I'm going to focus on this new thing on this podcast and go from there.
Yeah, that's a great question. It wasn't really as much of it wasn't like a conscious decision per se. I didn't go, I'm going to stop doing this and start doing this. It was kind of just where I felt like God was like pushing me in that direction almost. Growing up, I kind of come from a bit of a musical family, nothing crazy. And it's not like I was in some family band growing up or anything, but I kind of got into singing through being in high school choir, and then got into singing, got into playing instruments, got into making music slowly over time. And that was by far my biggest passion. And like you just mentioned, it still is one of my biggest passions. I don't have the fire and desire to really push that out right now and make that what I spend all of my time on. And I think that's primarily because I struggled, like you said, to feel that consistency, to feel that growth, to feel like I was really getting somewhere. And even though, like I said, it wasn't conscious, I had this feeling of, okay, I think it's a good time to start shifting into a role that I can build into again, where it doesn't feel like I'm just sitting down to start writing a song or start producing a song and just nothing's coming from it. I want to be creative. I want to feel creative, because that's who I am. And that's how I express Adam the most. That's when Adam comes out. And as I've talked about on my show before, I've been waiting and kind of praying for an idea and a concept to come from me for podcasting and social media and content creation. But in times where I tried content creation in the past, I don't think I had for lack of a better term, like an archetype or a theme to go off of. I was more so just going, oh, let me make a video and see how it does, not let me have this concept to build around. So when I was sitting in Waffle House one morning back in May of this year, the term passion projects just popped in my head. And for some reason, that just like really meant something. And even though I'd heard that term many times before, that just immediately became my theme and my vision and my idea for what I wanted to do for my next step of creativity. And even though music is not on the burner right now, it's kind of taking a back seat. I know that will come kind of full circle and be a big part of what I do in the future. Passion projects has just turned into what the creative vision is at the moment.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and it's a new chapter too for you, which I think is super exciting, and you've obviously talked about that in the episodes. And I think you talked about a lot of that in that first episode that you did, where it was just you, and you kind of explained to the listeners like what the show is going to be about and everything. So I guess I'm curious to know as well, like when you first started sitting down with individuals, you were doing a lot of the in-person stuff to start with. People locally where you live, people that you were friends with for a long time, or at least for the last several years. So did it kind of start there where you were like, let me reach out to people that I'm already connected with? Maybe that'll be a good way to kind of start these conversations. Is that kind of how it went?
100%. Yeah, being around music for so long now, you make musical friends, you make artist friends, and not having ever been in the podcasting kind of realm, I didn't necessarily know how to reach out to guests, how to invite people onto the show that, maybe had a bigger audience to go off of. I just didn't know any of that. So I thought I got to start somewhere. This is where I'm feeling called and led to do, and what the kind of work I'm feeling pushed towards. So why not start with the people that I creatively work with and also love dearly, Yeah. So it made me less nervous to get into it. Not that I was ever super nervous. Talking to people and just having conversations has never been something that I've necessarily struggled with. But jumping into that role was definitely a big change, and it's very different. So that was definitely a reason I started with some of those in-person interviews. And I would love to continue doing in-person interviews. Just logistically, it becomes much more difficult because without having a big podcast with having a producer and different people that are playing different roles and making sure it runs correctly, I'm having to carry the mental load of, I got to make sure these cameras are running. I got to make sure the lighting's set up well. And it's a lot of work that you don't really see at all. So behind the scenes is different.
Yeah, when you're a one-man show, and me and you can both relate to that, when you're a one-man show, you got a lot of things you got to do and figure out. And that's the thing, I give credit to you for even like trying to go that route on your own to start with, because it is a ton of stuff that you got to get like set up and make sure it's working and things like that. And that kind of leads me into another good question, which would be, what have been the struggles of doing this in your first year of podcasting? And has there been anything that you've really had to learn along the way that you've had to say, okay, I might have had a misstep here, but let me try to do something else in the future? And then while you're learning these lessons, do you feel yourself getting better as you've been going on and doing each episode?
Yeah, no, I 100% think I've gotten a lot better at it. I don't know how much it necessarily shows, but on the back end, I know my processes have gotten so much better, and I'd be happy to dive into exactly kind of what that means. But just the first thought that comes to mind is a little bit like I just touched on. Something that I mentally struggled with when I first started was, how am I going to find these people to talk to? And the last 6 months of doing this, what I've realized is they'll come. The people are there. And it's not necessarily about spending like an hour or two a day or a week finding these people. It's just, I'm on the internet, I'm scrolling. If I find you interesting and I think you'd be someone that'd be fun to talk to and come on the show, I'll just send you a DM and say, hey, what's going on? Would you like to come talk on here? So that's something that initially I think really scared me, is just the uncertainty. And like for instance, you emailed me, and that was such a cool blessing, because before I'd reached out to people and either did or didn't hear back, but to have someone like you that's in the podcast realm, in the music realm, reach out to me was really, really cool. And so thank you for doing that. I really appreciate it.
For sure.
I think that's a big lesson learned, is that have some patience and just realize that the timing isn't necessarily up to me. It'll come organically. You don't have to force the guests to come on. Does that kind of answer your question?
Yeah.
I can branch off in different ways.
No, for sure. Because I honestly feel like, because I've been doing it now 5 years, and I remember feeling the exact same way at the beginning, where I was only reaching out to people that I was connected with and that I knew already. Then I feel like once I got that initial feedback to people, being positive about it and saying they wanted to come on the show, then it's like almost once you get those first few episodes, the word of mouth starts to spread on its own. And then the thing for you is, you're already doing such great work on social media. That's the big reason I came across your platform to begin with, is because of your social media stuff. And from there, I went and I checked out the episodes, and I could tell you were really putting some genuine energy into what you were doing, and I really loved the message of the show. So I reached out, and I think we both kind of come from the same background of doing that, where it's like we're actively looking for people to work with or to connect with, and to have these conversations with, or just try to make some type of change in a positive way. So that's a big thing to do, and it's great to hear that that's been kind of the role for you, to be able to do that. And I assume that a lot of people, especially locally, are helping you kind of spread the word about the show as well. Have you had anyone other than me so far hit you up to be on the show, like message you directly?
No one's messaged me directly. I am starting to get to the point where like Instagram and TikTok, those accounts are definitely growing, especially in follower numbers, but YouTube's really the one that's taken off. And not necessarily getting new podcast guests, but I am actually starting my first brand sponsorship, which is someone that's reached out to me, which is pretty cool. So I feel like I'll almost certainly start to get some more people reaching out to me in the next 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months. And that'll be really exciting to see. I don't know who that'll be, but I'll be curious to see who it is.
How do you think you're going to handle, let's say, if the volume of not only listenership, but the interest to be on the show goes up? Because this is something that I've been dealing with now the last couple of years, that my show's been getting bigger and I've had more people want to be on the show. How do you think you're going to deal with that, as far as, being able to book people, being able to plan the show more like accordingly? Because I feel like when you start, it's like it's a lot easier to be able to plan everything nice and neat.
Yeah.
And then when you have more people coming in, it's going to get a little harder. So how do you think you
Well,
anticipate that going?
That's a great question. I think at the end of the day, like, it is my podcast. It is something that I also want to enjoy doing. So if, let's say, I have 10 people reach out to me in 2 weeks and I can only do, 2 or 3 or 4 interviews in that time frame, just around life and logistics and my day job, the best people, the people that I'm most interested to speak to that are doing, the biggest things, that will have to rise to the top. And it's not that I don't want to have conversations with necessarily smaller artists, but I want to speak to people that are confident in what they're doing, that see a vision in the future for where they want their brand and their art and their ideas to go. I think it just comes down to, do I enjoy what you're doing? Do I love the art you're creating? And would I enjoy having a conversation with you just the same way like I enjoy having a conversation with you, and love what you're doing? And I think the best just rise at the top. Even though that would be tough to kind of tell people, I'm booked up for a while. I don't know if I'll be able to have you on or if that'll be an option in the near future. But that's a blessing, At the end of the day, that's a blessing. It's not like it's a bad thing. It's just like when you run a type of business, which is practically what this is. You can't always please everyone, and I want the best talent and the best opportunities. So.
Yeah, for sure. And it definitely changes and evolves over time. And we'll get into that later toward the end as well. So I guess next on the bill, I kind of just want to know about how you structure the questions that you ask to each guest. How have you been doing that so far as coming up with certain questions? Because I feel like you ask, similar questions in episodes, but you try to change it up per guest as well. Have you had any challenges with trying to figure out how to structure what you're going to ask each guest? Or are you more of like, I believe in, myself, my personality, and just conversation skills that you have? And do you kind of approach it sometimes where you're just free flowing off the top of your head?
I love that question. I really would say I've gotten a lot better at being free flowing. At the start, I didn't necessarily trust myself in a 45-minute to hour-long conversation that I can riff and have better questions than what I wrote down. How it started, more so for the first, let's say, 1 to 10 podcasts, the first half of what I've done, is I would definitely spend a lot more time watching their content, listening to their music, seeing what kind of work they did, and digesting what they do to break that down into questions that I thought seemed fit for what kind of story I was trying to tell through that. And I would say as time has gone on, I have gone less into diving necessarily into exactly what they're doing, and I've started asking maybe some more like a 50-50 split between like overarching creativity questions mixed with how that interacts with what they do specifically as an artist. Sometimes I go less in depth with the questions, just depending on the guest, but like my guest, Nick Snyder. He is a software developer. He does content creation. He does a little bit more of kind of a lot of things in the realm of artistry and creativity. And I broke down a lot of my questions based off of the content that he made, strictly because that was the biggest part of what he did. And then as the conversation kept going and everything, I would go away from the questions I wrote down, just because a lot of times you can write down questions, but I believe that sticking to exactly what you wrote down and how it goes, I believe that's not going to be as it's less structured than what you thought it would be, but the organic flow of the conversation is more important than the structure that you thought you'd have, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I find it to be a much better long form conversation if you can learn how to go with the flow of the conversation. You can still call back on some of those questions you had, especially if it, like, the conversation starts here. I guess if you can't see me, the conversation starts in the middle and then branches off to the left or the right. with those questions that go left and right, you can bring them back and steer them towards the direction you want to go. But the flow of it is really going to change every single time. I know there was a lot of explaining on how that works, but that's really how I see questioning a guest.
Yeah. Hey there, hope you're enjoying the episode so far. I just wanted to take a quick minute out to let you know about a couple different ways that you can support the podcast. One of the ways is by clicking that support the podcast button within your streaming platform. That is if you want to be a monthly supporter of the show. You can contribute either 99 cents, $5, or $10 a month. So that's the first way, and that's the more traditional way that we've had now for the last couple years. The other method that we actually just recently introduced is from our good friends over at Ko-fi. Ko-fi is a virtual tip jar. We have set our limit to a minimum of $10, but you can go make one-time, one-off donations. So if you visit ko-fi.com/the Proven Knowledge Podcast, you'll be able to donate. And all these different forms of donation go towards getting new guests every single week, getting potential sponsors on board to do giveaways, and overall just making the show better for you guys. So if you want to do that Ko-fi link, it's ko-fi.com/the Proven Knowledge Podcast. Otherwise, again, look for that support the podcast button in your streaming platform if you'd like to be a monthly supporter. And I just want to say thank you guys for your contributions. And without further ado, let's get back into the episode. I feel the exact same way because I've always felt like I almost make the list as an outline, but I never follow the outline to the T.
For sure.
I'm like using the outline as okay, if I need to reference this during the interview, it's there, but I'm not necessarily using it to every little last degree that it is.
It's not the end all be all of the conversation.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's great advice for anyone that's, trying to start a show or a podcast or any type of platform where they're going to be talking with individuals. And I always feel like the guest is more comfortable when you are not just reading them straight from so what do you think you would do if you're talking like that, it's like the guest knows that you're not even like having a real conversation with them. So their responses are probably not going to be as comfortable as you want it to be. And it's like, it's going to make the whole thing feel kind of awkward.
It's not as interesting to them either.
Yeah, for sure. So, and I feel like a lot of that has to do with, injecting your personality into it and being yourself through the platform. And I think I said that on your show when I was on about how you have to actually show who you really are in whatever you're trying to put out there. And that goes for anything, but like, especially if you're having any type of conversation with someone, like really put your personality in it and your platform and things like that, and kind of let people know why you do what you do. And that will make people want to come back and check things out more. And I feel like I felt that way exactly about your show because I watched that intro episode and I was like, oh, there's a real purpose behind this. There's meaning there. He's told me some of his story. He's told me his background in music, so I can relate to that part. And then from there, I wanted to keep checking it out and doing it. So I got to say hats off to you for doing that so far. And I think you're going to keep doing that moving forward, which I think is awesome. And I do want to, yeah, for sure, man. It's going to be exciting. Just a total sidebar question. Are you doing seasons for the podcast? Because I've never done seasons. I take 1 week off a year, and that's kind of like the break, but I don't have official seasons for my podcast. So are you doing like season 1, season 2? How are you doing that?
That's a great idea. Maybe that's something I should look into.
Because I've never done it, but I know a lot of people that do it.
I've had the thought before, but I'm doing so much with social media right now that I'm finding it very difficult to go into a planning and like a thoughtful phase where I really think so far ahead, because in reality, I'm getting up every day and going, okay, what do I have to do literally today?
Yeah.
But I think seasons would be a good next step, especially considering I'd like this podcast to go on for many years. And I think that'd be cool for people to see that go through the years and how that changes.
I don't know. I've always thought about doing seasons, and then I'm like, well, I guess my format is just take a week off at the end and let people know, see you next year. And that's, I guess, my unofficial season. When do you take your week? It's coming up here. It's usually like Christmas to New Year's Day. That's the break. So I don't put out an episode and I don't record anything that whole week. And then I pick it back up at the beginning of the year. So that's like my unofficial break, but I just always wonder like if people do seasons for a specific reason or if they don't even care, if they're just putting them out whenever they want to put them out. But you mentioned, your journey on social media, and I've seen a lot of your videos on Instagram and Facebook as well, and TikTok. Talk about that journey a little bit, because it is a bit different from podcasting, but with the way you're doing videos in general, you're making them very intriguing, very interesting. I know you're doing the student loan series right now, which is very interesting. So talk to me about that, and what has been maybe not the struggles, but like what has that journey been like as opposed to the podcasting journey, and how is it different?
That's thank you for letting me talk about this, because I feel like it's almost going to be therapy, because there's a lot of thoughts I have on it. So yes, I have the podcasting portion of the show, which is Passion Projects. That is the structure and the long-term bit of it that's going to be very, very consistent. And with that, I try my best to upload a full podcast every single week on Friday morning. I try to upload a couple shorts that are like great moments from the show that will have the full upload. I try to do probably 3 to 5. That's kind of the range I've gotten it in. And then I do one long form video that's like a cool topic from the show that's usually about 5 to 10 minutes. And that's the theme of Passion Projects. That's really the gist of it. And that takes a lot of time to do. But then on top of that, I add basically just a bunch of short form content. I try to film anything that looks fun, interesting, goes with the trends of the current time. But really what is occupying most of my time and honestly growth with social media is, like you mentioned, the student loan series. I am currently on day 48 of a series day 49 of a series where I pay off my student loans every single day until I become debt free. And it's not an original idea. I will not take credit for it. It's been done before, but I'm doing my own twist on it. And basically, I try every single like or comment or new follower is all worth a certain value that I take and pay towards my student loans. It's pretty much just a short form video that I do every day to try to drive engagement, to try to help the audience and the community have a goal that we can work towards together. And it's doing really well. It's fantastic. Like I mentioned, it's growing. It's causing the biggest portion of my growth on social media. Now, like I said, it wasn't my idea, but it has definitely taught me a lot as far as social media goes. I would go on Instagram, definitely Instagram specifically on this one, and see a lot of these kind of reels that are very story driven. Those seem to do the best on Instagram, and maybe TikTok, YouTube too, but I see it the most on Instagram. Yeah. These story-driven reels with fast camera cuts and, moving in and out of the shot and then having smooth transitions, a central theme that goes around it. And I didn't really know how to make that before, but as I started diving into understanding how to make these videos and how to control these cuts and what camera angles work better, it's taught me a lot about how storytelling can be done with short form content repeatedly.
Yeah.
So that's the biggest thing that I took away from it so far, is that whether it's about student loans or like a hippopotamus, like I feel like I could tell you a story through short form content on social media now, which has been really transformational as far as learning how to grow. But on the other hand, there's some downsides to it. I've done this almost 50 days now. It gets really repetitive. It's a lot of keyframes. It's a lot of adding text graphics nonstop. It is a lot of zooming in and out and mixing these videos every single day in with a full-time podcast, a full-time job. I'm getting married in 3 months. It's the Christmas holiday season. It's a lot.
Yeah.
It takes... I don't think people would see this from the outside, but it takes roughly 2 to 3 hours a day to make one of those videos. And you have to film it, you have to make the slides for it, you have to make the script for it, you have to film it, you have to edit it, you have to upload it. All of that together, I'd say on average, takes at least 2 hours a day. So I still feel very motivated to do it and continue with the series. I don't know necessarily how long it will last. I don't know how long I could keep that up. But it definitely can contribute a lot to some repetitive burnout. And even though it does really well, I would definitely see myself shifting into a different type of storytelling, a different theme to have it go around. But that's kind of my initial thoughts. Is it's where I see social media going, and you're going towards a more authentic, story-driven type of content. Um, but also, it can't get stale, and you have to learn to what's the word I'm looking for? Not articulate. You have to learn to add layers on top of what you're doing and improve. It's just there's so many facets to it. I don't know if that kind of got off to a tangent.
No,
but
I think
that's my feelings on it.
Yeah, and I think too, like it's almost about shifting too. Like you got to be willing to shift and kind of go to that next thing when it's time. But it just is impressive to see that you've been able to do it that long. And you said like 2 hours a day, times that by 50. You know what I mean? That's how many hours you're putting in.
Yeah.
So very interesting stuff, but I think it's cool for you because you have the power to do storytelling through short form content, and the podcast is more of that long stuff, you know what I mean? So it's great to be able to have different ways that people can absorb those stories too. See, you could have told me that was your idea and I would have believed it because I've never seen it. So you were probably the first person I saw do it. So I was like, okay, you could have got away with that one, but I appreciate the honesty.
Yeah,
for sure.
I'm sure you've seen there's many people online right now that are doing the day 37 of something.
Of this, yeah.
I don't know how many people are doing
the
necessarily like likes and comments and new followers are worth a value.
Oh, yeah, that. Something. Yeah.
But there's this guy named, I can't think of his last name, but I know on TikTok he goes by, it's at Mikey. And he started the series and he blew up with it. And I kind of just put my own version and spin on it, but I wish I could take credit for it. The next idea I would definitely like to be my own.
Yeah,
and
be
more,
be the one of one. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Love that, man. We're down to the last few questions here. We got about 9 or 10 minutes here left to go.
Sure.
So let's get into these last few. The first one is, if you could go back 10 years ago, give yourself any piece of advice, or maybe not change anything at all, what do you think you would do?
Oh, I always feel like these, and I asked this kind of question to my guests, but I haven't thought too deeply on my own end what I would do, unfortunately. I mean, just like a spur of the moment kind of thought. I don't know exactly how much I would change or what I would tell 16-year-old Adam, because the last 10 years have consisted of some of this, a lot of this, and a lot of this, a lot of up and down. And I don't know if you can trade that, There's Chris Williamson, who does the Modern Wisdom podcast, one of the biggest ones in the world. Something that he talks about is that like there's unteachable lessons, basically, that you have to experience things in life to actually learn them. Someone can tell you a lesson, but that doesn't mean it's going to make sense, or you're going to actually follow that or go through with it. So I believe there's a lot of unteachable lessons that I couldn't have learned without going through them. So I guess if there's one thing I could tell myself, it would be to just live life on your own terms. There's so much, especially in 2026, there's so much noise out there. There's so much, so many voices you hear all the time, giving you so many different opinions all the time. And at 16, especially, or whether you're, 13 or 20, like, or my age now, 26, you don't know how much all that noise affects your thought process and thinking. So, like, try your best to just drown out everyone else and spend time going through and learning what do I think? What do I want? If I had done that 10 years ago in the same kind of way that I do that now, like figured out exactly what does Adam want out of life right now, I would believe that I would be on a very different path right now, and I've figured out a lot of these life lessons sooner just by going through and figuring out what I actually wanted out of life instead of listening to all the noise.
Yeah. It's like that moment of realization. You realize the power is in your own hands in a lot of ways, and you can kind of steer the ship however you want to steer it in a good amount of ways too. So And that leads into the next question, which is, 10 years from now, where do you think you envision yourself creatively and in life overall?
Yeah, like I mentioned before, I'm getting married in 3 months. So, in 10 years from now, I would love nothing more to wake up next to my beautiful wife and, have some kids running around the house. And that's always been a dream my entire life is to be a husband and a father. So 10 years from now, I'd love to be able to say that, I have a 6-year-old and a 8-year-old and a 3-year-old running around and laughing and making memories and going to soccer practice, all those kind of things. But I mean, I would really say that creatively and for like a career path that I would want to be doing what I'm doing right now for passion projects. Of course, I will iterate on this idea and it will change and different things will grow out of it. Some things will get lost in that. But when I came up with passion projects, it's meant to be a very, very long-term goal. I feel like I'm pretty close to making passion projects actually have an income source that can be fairly sustainable. So I would love to have this as a career and really build a true business out of passion projects. I'd love to have a music studio, a podcast studio. I'd love to be a musician in the mix of all that. I just see myself being in control of my own life in a way that I don't think I would have anticipated, especially not 10 years ago. But just being my own boss, doing what I love, and having the family that I've always dreamed of.
Yeah. Well, that's incredible goals to have, man. And I got to say, you're definitely working every day to get to them. And early congrats on the wedding, because that's incredible.
Thank you.
And just congrats and thank you again for everything that you do with your channel, with your Passion Projects podcast as well. And, man, I'm going to stay tapped in with what you're doing. And we'll definitely be having more future conversations as well. But thank you so much for stopping by, man, and for supporting my stuff too, because it really means a lot. And I'm gonna keep supporting you, man. So thank you.
Yeah, it's nice to see your name pop up and like my videos every time. So thank you. Thank you for sticking around and being a part of it too. And of course, we will definitely stay in touch, and we're gonna grow this together. So absolutely.
Thanks, guys, for listening today. That was episode 290. We'll be back this time next week. As always, hit that support button on your podcast streaming platform if you'd like to send us any funds. And feel free to leave us that 5-star rating if you enjoyed today's episode. So we'll see you next week. Thanks, everyone.